What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we got to talk about Life is Strange Double Exposure. We got the basically, I believe, hour-long live stream. There is so much to talk about, from some of the bigger details they revealed to, man, I mean, they gave us about 15 plus minutes of actual gameplay. It is so good to be back, and it begins now. If you guys have been wondering, where's Alex's theories, predictions, all that jazz, this is the kickoff video. We got a lot to talk about, from Rachel Amber to Chloe and many other things. So number one, it's so good to see Hannah Telle back. I want to just give her some props because I think she was a big part of the live stream, and I even saw some people in the chat saying, like, man, she really is Max. She kind of has always been Max, right? If you look back at some of the behind the scenes stuff they did back in 2015, I mean, just her personality, obviously the way she talks, right, just resembles Max so much. And it was actually interesting to hear her say, while she hasn't changed, or her voice hasn't changed, Max's voice has actually changed a little bit, and her posture has actually changed, right? She's a little bit more stand-up-ish, right? She's not so, like, hunched over and maybe shy in that way. So when she portrayed her this time, she actually had to change her own stuff to match Max. So I thought that was really just interesting, but again, really great to have her back and to hear her talking quite a bit, not just the behind-the-scenes stuff, but then see Max and so much of the gameplay. Really cool. Okay, let's get to a couple of key things I want to talk about from the actual breakdown. The first of which has got to be not choosing an ending. Now, this is one, I think we're just going to talk all about it in this video. I was considering making a second video, so bear with me. We're going to go on a little bit of a rant, but I definitely want to hear your guys' opinion because I feel like this is split, although maybe I'm a little bit more aggressively on one side. So here's the deal. What we know from what they confirmed, right, is there's not a canonical ending. And as soon as they said that, my jaw dropped. I was like, what? I think I maybe even said that out loud. Like, what? So, okay, I'm not a big fan of that. Now, I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you where I think it could go wrong. At the same time, respecting the idea that, it could play out right, or, I know there's other people out there that are fine with it, and we'll talk about that as well, okay? No canonical ending. So, the issue that I have with that is I do like or respect their mindset of respecting us, right? Like, we chose an ending in Life is Strange 1, and because these games are so separate from each other, they want to make it feel impactful. Like, you had your Life is Strange 1 game, and that's yours. They're not going to take that away from you by picking the opposite ending. And in that mindset, I think I can understand it, right? Like, if that's where you're coming from, I completely get it. What I'm a little worried about is, because this is 10 years later, because although this is separated from the first game, I think there's going to be a fair amount of Easter eggs, a fair amount of continuity, even if they're not going to drastically go after it, or it's not going to be the biggest deal. I think there'll be a good amount of it, because so much of it is about Max turning off herself, right? Turning off the powers and then basically restarting them. And we'll talk about that in this video as well, losing the ability to rewind time. That's a big one that they broke down in the live stream. So, okay, where I'm coming from is when you have, say, the picture of Chloe. We saw that in, I believe, today. They showed, Max is looking at a picture of her. Number one, great model. Like, I really like the way that Chloe looks and, like, the updated graphics and all that. The way that I'm thinking about it is you basically have that picture. Max has that picture, and she has it no matter what, right? Like, no matter which ending you as a player chose in the first game, she has that picture. The game will then give you a choice of why you have that picture, and that's something that on its own might not be a big deal, but I feel like a butterfly effect, right? Let's connect it to Life is Strange. I feel like it can kind of expand and become worse as time goes on, or as more of those Easter eggs or connections or whatever, the more that they happen, the more that I think it's kind of like a gimmick, right? And maybe I'm still not explaining it right, maybe I'm not conveying it, but that's just kind of how I think about it. You have a picture of Chloe, and instead of you knowing from the beginning of the game why you have the picture of Chloe, right? Maybe that's where I stand. I would prefer at the very beginning of Double Exposure, they tell you, or they ask you, which ending do you want to go with? And then that way, everything that happens, you know why she has the picture of Chloe. It's because she's dead, or it's because she's alive, right? Like, either one, but you know it. In this way, in the way that I think the game is going to go, you have and this is just one example, right? There's more examples. You have a picture of her, and it's going to ask you, why do you have that picture? Well, is it because she's dead, or is it because you were dating and you broke up, right? Like, whatever the reason might be, that's that's what I think that they're going for, and I'm just not a huge fan. They can prove me wrong. They can absolutely prove me wrong, but that's kind of where I stand on it right now. Another negative, and then we'll kind of start to nail some of the positives. One of the dialogue things really ticked me off. I think it ticked off a lot of people, but I think people were maybe more joking about it. I'm not actually joking. I actually think it was kind of a big deal. When you're asked by Safi, like, who's this Chloe girl, right? The blue-headed girl, and it gives you the options. They're not very good options, right? It's either like we were friends or we were like high school sweethearts. Number one, again, see, that's another example of I don't know if those are great answers if she's alive or dead, right? Like if you choose that she's dead and you pick the dead option, is that a great response for her being dead? And also, high school sweethearts, are you nuts? Like, do you know? And like, honestly, you can joke around with it, but where I would actually come very serious on this is like Chloe and Max's relationship was number one in the first game. Like, it was maybe the most important part of the first game. In fact, it had to be, because you had to either sacrifice a freaking city or sacrifice Chloe. So to boil it down to, we were friends or we were, we were dating back in the day. Well, number one, does that mean that you broke up if you saved her? So that could be an issue because they seem like they would maybe be together forever. And number two, I feel like you're kind of just diminishing their relationship value to something smaller than it really was. So I am not a fan of that. And again, it's one dialogue, it's one choice, but it's still an impactful one. In fact, it's directly talking about Chloe. So I do worry / wonder, the conversational things that are going to be in this game. They've got to nail it. We talked about this when it was first announced. I couldn't be more excited. This is a game that like changed my life. This is one of my favorite games of all time, the first game. You need to do this right. You're not bringing Max back like just for, a vacation, like, oh, we need a little bit of money, let's make a game with Max. No, you need to do this right, or you're going to have a lot of angry people, at your doorstep. Okay, but, ranting over, those were honest. I would be very honest with this. Those are my two biggest flaws. There was a little cheesy kind of dialogue when they were, watching the stars and stuff outside when like Safi and they were doing their little dance thing. Like, it was a little weird, but the first game had some cheesiness. It had, like Shaka Bra, which they did say in this, which I think was awesome. So I'm not going to get like overly dramatic or worry too much, because it's like, if there's cheesy dialogue here or there, I think that's actually maybe more in line with the first game and the kind of feel or the tone of the first game. Not a big deal. Okay, honestly, everything else is a positive. I know I started with the negatives, so hopefully you guys made it through to this part. I mean, the game looks so good. And honestly, I will say this. As you saw the game more and more, and as I saw Max more and more, she looked like it resembled Max. It felt like Max. And I think, the whole motion capture with Hannah Tell, and again, just the voice, hearing her back, I think it did a lot of small things right. And I don't know if that would like just fly over people, but just like the way she moves, the way she talks, some of her pauses and some of her start, it is so Max Caulfield. So while I am, on one side of things, I'm a little worried that they're not going to be able to fully, convey or capture what made the original special, there was a lot of evidence that they got it. Honestly, there was a ton of evidence, not just from that. We're going to go over more examples, but I saw that and I was like, you know what? They might get it. You know what I mean? Like, they bring back some sound effects or just some small things here and there. It resembles Life is Strange 1. Maybe they're going to actually pull this thing off. Now, you have the powers, right? I want to get into that. So you have the rewind / okay, well, that's part of it, even though she can't do it anymore, right? You have that dilemma, plus you have this, multiversal, going in different timeline thing. I will say a couple things. Number one, I'm not a big fan of her not having, the ability to rewind time, okay? However, I will say, as opposed to what we talked about in the first half of this video, I'm more okay with the reasoning. This was something I really needed to hear, and we didn't get the full picture. That's a part of what I'm about to talk about right now. They didn't tell us everything, and I think they're doing that on purpose, but we did get enough where it's like, all right, I'll follow you. I'll keep with you for at least right now. So what they said is she does not have the rewind time power anymore. She basically, like I said, she shut that off after the first game, and she hasn't used it since. And because it's been 10 years, and because, it's just been so dormant, they reference like literacy and stuff, and because of that, she basically has well, you know what? They didn't say she can't do it anymore. In fact, they kind of said that it's evolved. I think they maybe used the word, I'd have to rewatch it. I think they used the word evolved. What basically has happened is the time travel power like inside Max, right, has manifested itself in a different way and maybe expanded and grew as Max continued to grow. And it now has become to be able to change timelines instead of rewind time. I will say that is a pretty good explanation. I was waiting and saying, okay, can you rewind time? Because, she takes the pictures and she's putting it up on the wall in the original trailer that, we saw last week. And so it's okay, well, is she going to be able to, touch it or focus in on it and go back in time? You know what? Honestly, I wouldn't doubt that they have it happen one time. I think it could happen one time. But I do think overall the explanation of she hasn't used it in so long, when she did use it, and they said this too, when she did use it, obviously it caused quite a catastrophe. So she doesn't want to use it. She's blocked that part out. And so in order to use a power, when the power kind of comes out of her again, it's changed form because she doesn't want that to happen again. Maybe the power almost doesn't want it to happen either. So that kind of evolution of like a power within you, and it's not too far different. She could rewind and fast forward time. Now she can jump to a different time. It's the same ballpark, right? But it's kind of an evolution of the first part of it. I buy that. That part I will follow them with. Now, there is one other part to this. Why did she use the power, or why did the power happen in the first place? Well, two parts to this, right? Number one, they did not answer, but they did say that is a key part of the entire game is why she's even doing it in the first place, or how it's even happening in the first place. Then when we saw the gameplay, and oh my God, there's so many videos we can make, and I will, trust me. Keep following the channel, subscribe, all that jazz. The gameplay is very interesting, right? Because it's when she takes a picture. She takes a picture of the sky, and then everything starts. And number one, I saw this actually on Twitter, there's like PTSD involved, and I actually really felt, I'm not going to claim like I have PTSD, but you can feel it through Max, and I think they captured it so freaking well. As soon as she takes the picture and you hear so many of the sound effects that were in the first game, right? And something's happened. In fact, it sounds like a gunshot happens when she takes that first picture, but she falls over, right? She gets dizzy, she walks out, she takes another picture of the owl, so it's an owl now, not a deer, and then it happens again. And again, like I saw it on Twitter where it's like, anybody else get PTSD? And it's like, yes, because, it captures, again, the feeling of here we go again, but something's off. Something is very, very off. And one thing I found interesting, again, I'm going to expand upon all these in future videos. Safi has a camera with her, right? When she pushes her over and she falls and she's dead, she's got a camera too. So Max taking a picture of the sky, that triggered something, but Safi also had a camera. Did they both take a picture at the same time? Oh my, that's what excites me, right? That's, I think, what made Life is Strange 1, by the way, so freaking special. Who's Rachel Amber? Is Rachel Amber actually Max in a different timeline? Remember those theories that were so popular and just made talking about the game so exciting? That is a huge part of what made 2015 so special. It needs to happen here as well. So that's one thing I want to point out, but that kind of feeling, as soon as she takes the picture and you just hear all that noise again, that is very, very... And also, when she's knocked out, correct me if I'm wrong, was that Chloe and Max talk? I don't know for sure, because it could have just been maybe like a future event, but when you hear somebody say Max, it didn't sound like Ashley Birch, but it could have been. And then, Max basically shouting, like she didn't mean for this to happen, or like, everything's happening. I don't know, that felt very Life is Strange 1-like, so I'll have to re-listen to that like over and over again to try to figure it out. One other thing I want to point out as well, beyond just the visuals, again, looking amazing, there's one moment that just completely, again, to me, captures that Life is Strange feeling and says, okay, they understand it to a degree. I don't know if they understand it all the way, but they get it to a degree. When Max tells Moses, right, her friend, that she's going to go out and, clear her head and all that stuff, she walks, the camera's in a perfect angle, she puts in the headphones, and then the music starts playing, and you can let it play as long as you want. You can exit it, and then she walks and she's talking to herself in her head. Oh, number one, soundtrack, incredible. They need to kill it with the soundtrack, and I think they will. Number two, that is Life is Strange. That, to a T, it's been replicated, and I don't think it's ever been replicated as well as the first game, right? When she's just sitting on a park bench, the music is beautiful, playing behind her, and then she's thinking to herself as the camera angles change. That is Life is Strange to me. That's what makes the game. Amongst other things, I guess, but like that is classic. When you think of that, you think of Life is Strange. I don't think any other game really does it like it. So when they did it, in this gameplay, I said, oh my God, yes, because the music is so good. She's talking to herself. You hear her in her head. And like I said, she captures a lot of mannerisms that Max had. The pausing of her speech, some of like just the dialogue she uses in general, whether she's talking to herself or whether she's talking to other people, it feels like Max. It absolutely does. So as of right now, I'm not really worried about like the writing quality with Max herself. I think they get her, but I am, again, I don't know if I'm concerned, but I'm definitely like paying attention to some of the outskirt stuff, right? Some of the choices, some of how you're going to address the first game stuff. And again, there's more we can talk about. I think that was Rachel Amber again, that we saw today. I think she was in the trailer. So Rachel's alive, I believe, in the other timeline, and that's going to be very interesting. So we got a lot more to talk about in a lot of other videos, but for now, we'll stop it here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.